PM for the Masses, Episode 2.
Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business, write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abaid.
Learn from the experts, think outside the box, have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Hello, everybody, once again to the PM for the Masses podcast. This second episode is packed with goodies for you, and I'm super excited to be here behind the microphone once again. I am really excited. I don't know if you can tell, but this show is a lot of fun, and I'm thrilled. Today's show is about value and values, and I'll have the intrepid Traci Duez here to tell us about that and the difference between value and values and what it all means and what does that have to do with project management and how to be better and how to work on your strengths. It's hard. I had the hardest time coming up with a title for today's episode because there's so much good stuff that we talked about with Traci, and you'll see that, and I hope that it's going to be as helpful to you as it was to me, and you see what I'm talking about. Now, speaking of values, some of the value that I myself will try to bring you with this show is to filter out some of the noise that's out there when it comes to project management content on the web. I mean, there's so much of it out there. There's so much stuff, and a lot of it is really good. But it's hard to find it. You know, because there's so much of it. So I want to be a resource for you when it comes to finding the best of the best. And so I want you to be able to come to pmforthemasses.com when you are looking for a specific resource on let's say on getting your PMP certification, or if you want to learn the basics of project management, or if you want, the top blogs for project management on the web to subscribe to, or anything like that. I want you to be able to come to pmforthemasses.com, click on the resource page, and find not hundreds of things, but maybe less than 10, or maybe here's the top 5 training course in project management, or here's the top 2 PMP exam preparation resources, things like that. So one thing I'm going to start doing on today's show is what I call the plug of the week. This is nothing, I didn't invent this. This is a lot of other podcasters do this, and I'll explain to you what that is in a second. But this segment's going to be called the plug of the week. So this week's plug of the week is Elizabeth Heron. And Elizabeth Heron is the person behind the website called A Girl's Guide to Project Management. And she is fantastic. She's one of the top bloggers in project management in the world. She's probably one of the top bloggers out there, period, not just in project management. She's really good. And her stuff is great. She gets shared by everybody. Everybody's tweeting and liking it on Facebook. Everything that she comes out with is just great. And this might be obvious to you. You might be really familiar with her, but I just wanted to start the plug of the week segment with her because she is, without a doubt, one of the top PM blogs out there. So, for example, I was just checking her website. Her latest post is called 7 Things to Do When Your Boss Changes. And just 7 little tips there on how to start the relationship on the right foot. So really great little tidbits of wisdom that she has to share that. And she's a great writer too. And not only that, her blog has won tons of awards by business magazines and things like that. It's really, really impressive. So my suggestion is you go visit her website and you subscribe to her mailing list. And I'm going to add links to her website. It's kind of a long URL here, but I'm going to link to her website. So if you go to the show notes for this episode at pmforthemasses.com/2, you will be able to find it there. And I'm sure you're going to like her website. It's really well designed as well. And if you do get in touch with her, please tell her that you heard about her here on the PM for the Masses podcast.
PM for the Masses podcast.
All right, so let's talk about today's feature segment. Today, I'm going to share with you my conversation with Traci Duez from Break Free Consulting. See, I met Traci when she presented at my local PMI chapter here in London, Ontario, a few months ago. And her presentation was really great. And after it was finished, I went and talked to her just to get to know her a little bit better, ask her some questions, and basically also to invite her to be on the PM for the Masses podcast. The show was not, obviously it was not released yet. It was not launched because it just launched, a few days ago. But she was, I would have totally understood if she said, no, I'm not interested, I'm too busy. But she was up for it right away. And an email conversation followed between her and I. And she's just great, all around great, So I'm really thrilled to have her here today. Traci Duez is a former high school and collegiate basketball coach. She is also one of the few women that umpires the Little League Baseball. Traci is a chemist by degree, which makes her a little nerdy, according to her, and she has also 15 years of experience in IT, which makes her a little geeky. So she's a nerd and a geek. And apparently, for you to know the difference between a nerd and a geek, you need to be both. That's what I read the other day. So her career has included positions as a chemist, medical technologist, laboratory automation specialist, computer validation consultant, project manager, and director for an IT consulting firm. She has spoken to over 12,000 project managers in the last 5 years at over 70 PMI chapters and 4 PMI global congresses. This is just in the last 5 years, folks. Her picture has twice graced the cover of PMI Today magazine. That's really impressive too. And today she owns her own business and is passionate about inspiring audiences to think better using the principles of neuroaxiology. And she's going to explain to us what that means during the interview. In her own words, this is not too bad for a girl who was afraid of public speaking since until 2006. And Traci spoke with me from her office in Sugar Land, Texas. Enjoy the interview.
Special guest coming up next. PMforthemasses.com. PMforthemasses.com.
Good morning, Traci. How are you?
Doing great, Caesar. How are you?
I am doing great that I'm talking to you today.
Nice. Thank you.
It is nice. Traci, I saw you speak here at the PMI chapter here in Southwestern Ontario. And I'll tell you, I've listened to a lot of presentations, I've been to a lot of conferences, and I was really surprised at how good your presentation was. And at the end of it, I came up and talked to you, and I thought to myself, I have to have her on the show because you're just a rock star.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate that. As you can tell, when I was there face to face, I love what I do, and so it makes it kind of easy. So thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, it was great, and it was really valuable too. And I thought you had a different perspective to share with project managers that really aligns with the idea for the show. So thank you for taking the time to be here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Now, Traci, tell us a little bit about your background, your story. Briefly. You talked about that during your presentation, and you can mention some of those points. But how you got to be where you are today. Giving these talks and talking about what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, my background, my degree is in chemistry. And so I was pretty much of a nerd growing up. And well, to be quite honest, the only reason I got a chemistry degree was so that I could play basketball in college. And as you know, I'm about 5'4". So most people don't think it was to play basketball, but that was why. So I got this chemistry degree, and I went to grad school in athletic coaching at Ohio State University. Oh, sorry, I should have said the Ohio State University. They want you to do that. But then I realized you didn't make enough money coaching, especially just starting out. So I started to use my chemistry degree. But then I realized that I was really a lazy chemist. And at the time, I worked for Abbott Labs, Ross Products Division in Columbus, Ohio, and we analyzed the stability of their consumer products, Selsun Blue, Murine, Clear Eyes, stuff like that. And what they were doing was they were starting this new lab. They were bringing it into Columbus, Ohio from North Chicago. And they had me start this lab. And so they gave me $250,000 to go buy all the instruments, like the stuff you see on CSI, HPLCs and GCs and all kinds of little letters and stuff like that. And so I did all that, and I bought all these big volumetric flasks and beakers and things that, chemists buy whenever they're going to do testing. And one of the things that I bought, though, was this it was a refurbished Zymark robot. It cost $25,000. I still remember. And what I ended up doing was using it to mix up and do the extractions and all the chemical stuff that you do. And instead of me having to do it, I learned how to program on the 3.5-inch floppy disk. You learn how to program what the robot was going to do. And it ended up actually saving $250,000 a year in reagents, because instead of using all those big glass things that I bought, it used syringes and created just about enough that I needed to put into the instrumentation. So, when that happens, Caesar, people think that, you're really smart. When in truth, I was just really lazy and didn't want to actually do much work. And so what happened then is that I was also too lazy to take the printouts off of the instruments and actually type them into the database. So I talked to my folks in IT, some nerdy people, geeky people get together, and we interfaced the instruments to a database, and people thought that was pretty smart in the early 90s. And so you would have it, whenever you're in the corporate world and you do something good, you have to quit your job and become a consultant. So that's what I did. And so I got into IT, became a director of an IT consulting company, and then realized that there were some brilliant people that I was hiring, but they needed to work on some people skills because we were consultants. And I ended up taking a Hartman value profile, which is what I introduced you to in that talk, and looking into this new profile that I had never taken. And you've probably taken lots of assessments, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this one was new, and it really ticked me off that I did not know how to manipulate. Take it right. I just didn't know how to do that. To give my boss the answers that I thought I should give my boss, I didn't know how to manipulate it to do that. So it intrigued me enough, or ticked me off enough, that I started to look into it and found a whole new science that I had never heard before, mm-hmm. and that's called axiology.
Okay, and we'll get to that.
Yes.
But I think before we get to that, I think we can talk about your definition for what a project manager's real job is.
Yeah, and it really does come out of what I've learned, and I believe the true job of a project manager, and almost of any person, is to add or create the greatest value. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, your focus may sometimes be on processes. It may sometimes be on productivity, but it should always be on the people too. And so, focusing on adding value and creating the greatest value is really our job. And sometimes, to be quite honest, Caesar, sometimes what would add the greatest value is for the PM to stand up and cancel their own project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it may be taking away value instead of adding it. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, the word value. I mean, I've been through your material. I've attended your talk, and when I think of value, I think I either think about adding value added, all that stuff, about creating, adding value to a project, for example, or to a company, or to something, but also when I took your test, it talks a lot about your personal values or a company's values. It's the same word, but the meaning is different, isn't it?
Yeah, and you actually used it. You said the word values, which is very different. Your values, your core values are, you believe in honesty and integrity, and those are core values. However, value, just the word, axiology is a science of value judgments, and valuations. I never said the word values in there because we use those a little bit differently. So, value is objective, and what we choose to be our core values is subjective. It's up to us. And there's that's basically what I discovered, and what I learned is that there's a science of value dynamics, just like in aerodynamics. And so there's a way to measure how you with the profile that you took, there's a way to measure where you see value the best, and where your perspectives of value might be a little skewed because of habits that we've created over our lifetime.
Now, is this the objective value that you're talking about, or the subjective?
It is the objective value that I'm talking about. So in the assessment that you took, there is a mathematical hierarchy of value behind each of the words and phrases that you ranked, and there are 18 of those. You did 2 sets of 18, and so behind that there's an objective mathematical. I mean, you know that infinity is greater than 100, and that 100 is greater than 1, and it's the same thing. There is a mathematical perspective, and it's based in transfinite calculus and set theory. So if your audience ever needs to go to sleep, I can talk to them about that. No, we can find that information and direct them to that information.
Okay, all right. So again, so axiology. You mentioned this word a few times. It's what's the definition for it?
It's the study, ology, of course, the study of value. Axio in Greek, I believe, means value, and so it's basically the study of value. Valuations and human value judgments, how we judge value.
Okay, so and how does this fit with project management, in your opinion?
Right. So I talked about, and the project managers that I've talked to over the years, like 15,000 of them, they agree that their job is to add and create value. And a lot of times we believe that that's subjective. What axiology allows us to do is show us that it's really objective, that there is a mathematical hierarchy of value. So Dr. Robert S. Hartman is the father of formal axiology, and he pulled together, he formalized it in the 50s and 60s. And his mission in life, he grew up in Germany before Hitler came to power, and then he fled the country when he saw what was happening. And his mission in life ended up being to organize good the way he saw Hitler organize evil. And so what he first had to do was define good and what that meant. Because good to most people, it means like it adds or creates value. But you can be a good criminal, which means you don't get caught. Right? So good was the meaning of the word good was what he really had to define. And so he did define it as being something has all the properties to fulfill its purpose. And I don't want to get into all of that. You can read all of his stuff, and we'll post a link on the link for this show, right?
Okay, yep.
So we can do that. And it's at hartmaninstitute.org, and you can look under his research topics, and he goes into how that thesis of goodness. But the basics of what he discovered was that there's 3 classes of value. And it's much like aerodynamics. If you saw an airplane and it had one regular sized wing and one short wing, you probably wouldn't get on it to try to fly, because you know just enough about aerodynamics to say, hey, that plane's not going anywhere. Well, at least with me on it. And it's the same thing with value dynamics. You do not have to know transfinite calculus or the theory of good or set theory, anything like that. All you have to know are the basics of value dynamics, and that's what Hartman pulled together. There are these 3 hierarchical classes of value, and the lowest class of value, project managers are very familiar with. it's called systemic, but it deals with plans and processes and ideas and things we make up in our heads. Rules, those kinds of things. Those all fall under the systemic class of value. And the reason it's the lowest is because what you do with the plan, what you create from the plan, takes it to the next class of value, which adds more value when you actually create a thing, and that's the extrinsic class of value, which deals with tangible, measurable stuff that you can touch and see and use.
Deliverable, I guess.
Right, deliverables. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
And so most of our lives, we've been trained there from elementary school through secondary school, even at university. We've been trained to focus on these two lowest classes of value. And frankly, the project management book of knowledge is filled with those two lowest classes of value.
Yeah, it assumes that you know where you're going with your life, and you have already decided what the deliverables are. And it's just a matter of codifying it and creating systems and a framework to get it done, so that you stay down in those two levels. But I think what you're saying is that we just take it for granted. The third level, I guess, which you talk about, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
The third level is the intrinsic. It's the infinite value that we produce when in our projects. We are always impacting some human being. And that's why I often ask project managers, how many of you work with human beings? And I ask them to raise their hand. And of course their hands go up. But if you read through methodologies, human beings aren't typically mentioned. They're called resources.
Resources, that's right.
Which is an extrinsic, which is meaning you're taking an intrinsic, infinitely valuable human being and devaluing them, which is okay. I mean, we are human doings as well. But for most project managers, we see our team members as human doings instead of human beings. We see our stakeholders as that way. We see our project owners that way, as human doings. Stuff we focus on what they're supposed to be doing rather than also who they are.
Yeah. And when you have a human being who for any reason can't do something, then we see their value diminished. When in case that's not the case, maybe they're just either sleeping or they're hurt, but they still have their dignity and they still have their intrinsic value. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely, and they just may not be in the right role in that case. So,
right. Yeah.
in the hierarchy of value, if you think of systemic, the ideas, the plans, the processes is like a 1 or a 0, because either you are following the plan or you're not following the plan. And then you think of the extrinsic, the deliverables that you create as n, just any number other than 1, right? It has more value, right? And then you think of intrinsic as infinity. And people are infinitely valuable. What else is infinitely valuable? Well, freedom, right? Courage, confidence, those kinds of things can also have infinite value because, well, frankly, without courage, you can't really live up to any of your values that we talked about before. You can have all the integrity in the world, but if you don't have the courage to act on it, then it doesn't do you much good.
Right.
Right. And so you think of that as infinity, and folks have questioned me. They're like, people aren't infinitely valuable. Look, that developer only makes however many thousands of dollars a year. And the truth is their role, their extrinsic role, is worth that amount of money. As a human being, they're infinite. And I do a little demonstration, right? I talk to people about infinity, and if you take 100,000 away from infinity, what do you have?
Still infinity.
Still infinity, right? If you take even bigger numbers away from infinity, you still have infinity. And Hartman discovered that human beings are the same way. I am a human being, and if the next time we talked, I didn't have my right arm, you took that away, or something took that away, would I still be a human being? Well, of course. If you took away my legs, would I be a human being? Surely I would. If you blinded me, would I be yes? And so here I am, a human being, and you can take away from me, and I'm still a human being. And we tend to forget that that part of value because we get so bogged down in the day-to-day of, we have this plan and we need to complete these tasks and check them off, and so we're not adding as much value as we could add if we focused more on value dynamics, all of them, all three classes.
Mm-hmm. And how can let's say a project manager who's listening right now, this all makes sense, but like when the rubber meets the road, how can they implement or what can they apply to their career and to their lives right now that would make them stand out and be better by taking into consideration these concepts?
Great question. Here's what happens is we develop these habits, right? Especially project managers. We've been managing projects or whatever, and we know the processes. We read the PMBOK, we get our certifications or whatnot, and we stay focused in those classes of value. What you can do is, let me tell you a story. So I live in Houston, Texas. The Houston Food Bank is the second largest volunteer organization in the city. The Houston Rodeo is number one for those of you who are curious. But the Houston Food Bank is it. So people will go and volunteer, right, for the food bank. And typically what they do, their project is to take the big cans of soup or peanut butter or whatever that they're in big boxes from the manufacturers, and we're to take a little box around and take, one can of beans and some peanut butter and put them in the little boxes, and then we take those little boxes and put them on a skid so that they can be taken out to the people that need them. Typically, people will spend 2 to 4 hours on their Saturday to do that, to create those boxes that are going to be handed out to the hungry people of Houston. And so there's project plans for that. I mean, you can see the systemic. Here's the plan. You go around, and here's what you do, and check, did it. You know how to get them to stay longer than 2 to 4 hours?
Get them to see the deliverables, I guess.
Yeah. A lot of people will say like feed them or whatever,
Yeah.
and that is extrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
To stick with what we're saying. What you want to do is intrinsically motivate them. Motivate them instead of just with their head in their hands, motivate their heart, because that's really what intrinsic is. And you can get them to work all day if just once you'll take them to hand out the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Where they get to see that little kid come running up and look through the box and jump up and down because he got peanut butter, or the mom crying off in the distance because she's so thankful that she has food for this week. The 2 hours is nothing. The 4 hours is nothing. You'll stay all day because of how that touches your heart. And here's the thing for project managers. Every single project, there isn't one on the planet that isn't being done for someone. And if you can understand the intrinsic value that you're adding to the lives of human beings, or even just one human being, if you can understand that intrinsic value and pass that on to your team, you'll stand out far and above the other project managers that are there that just follow the processes and check off the tasks.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I mean, the example you used, it's pretty obvious what the intrinsic value is, but I think it can be challenging if, your project is, I don't know, to implement a new data center, something that is more robotic and more cold.
Yeah,
how do you find intrinsic value? I mean, I guess if you find who you're helping, the person you're helping, and try to embrace that idea of that value you're adding to that person. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I just had a client. He took the free assessment. We had our call, and he was talking to me about, hey, that's a great idea to focus on the intrinsic value. But all I do is I work for a seed company, and I create the documents that for regulatory affairs that are in other countries, right? So I have to create all this document so that they can sell our products in other countries. So, I mean, it's all process stuff, he says. There's no intrinsic value in submitting regulatory documents to regulatory agencies in different countries. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. Because I said, so what happens after your product is approved? I said, what's it used for? He says, well, this one, this one that we're doing right now is used to grow more crops. And I said, well, doesn't that help the people? And he said, it was just like a light bulb went off. He said, oh my gosh, we just heard a story about a tribe in some African nation, I don't remember which, and by using our product, they were able to be out of debt for the first time in 7 generations. And so that's very intrinsic. If you can imagine being in the shoes of those people who have for almost all of their existence known that they've been indebted to other tribes, to see the relief and the freedom that they now have. And so, I mean, truly, he hung up from our call and he went and he talked to people about getting videos of those people so that he could give to his team, so that they could see what a difference they make in the lives of other human beings.
That makes sense. I guess you can, if you keep, I always think of calculus because I'm an engineer, but you take a constant and integrate that constant, you get to a straight line, and integrate that, you get to a parable. You can always keep doing that until you find that kernel of intrinsic value that is built into any project, I guess. And then you communicate that down to the team so everybody embraces that. Is that
yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. But here's the flip side of that too, Caesar, is that if you look, I mean, because you're looking for this ripple effect, right? How's your product going to impact this and on out as it ripples on out? And if you can't find it, that might not be a project you should be working on.
Right.
You not you personally, but the company or whomever, because it might not be adding the greatest value. You may be able to use those resources, financial as well as human, and to do something else, to add greater value in another way.
Right. Or it could just be a bad project that delivers evil instead of good, in the case of Nazi Germany, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah, that actually takes value away.
Away, yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So what gets in the way? So let's say that's the project manager is able to kind of see that. What gets in the way usually of delivering value?
Yeah, it's how we see and perceive value based on our own value judgments and our own valuing habits. Because all through our lives, we've created habits in our brain by doing something over and over again. And those habits, when they were created, probably added value to your life. However, today, 10, 20, 40 years later, whatever it happens, they don't serve you anymore. They actually sabotage you and being able to see how to add and create the greatest value. And in my talk, I usually blame all my bad habits on my mother, and she knows this, by the way. And so, she told me when I was young, she said, and you hear parents say this, don't talk to strangers. I mean, I was the firstborn in our family. My mom was 18 when she had me. She was 362 days later. She had my sister Shelly. So we're the same age for 3 days. It's kind of cool. I call her up on her birthday and ask her how old she is, and then I just say, "Me too." So we do that for 4 days or 3 days, and then I don't call her anymore. And so then my mom, another year and a half later, had my other sister, and then a couple years later, she had another sister. So she's like 23 years old and has 3 or 4 pretty young girls that she has to take to the A&P with her when she goes grocery shopping. And so she would always tell us, don't talk to strangers. And you can understand that. She did not want her oldest, smartest, and prettiest daughter to be taken from her. So I listened, and I heard it, and I repeated it to myself over and over and over again. So when I was 4, that habit of not talking to strangers served me very well. But when I'm 34 and leading teams or directing an IT consulting company, the habit doesn't serve me, because what it has done in my life is made me afraid to speak in front of people, made me afraid to speak to people I don't know, very hesitant and that sort of thing. And it's actually lowered some of my self-confidence. But at the time, it served me very well. Mm-hmm. And so what we can do is we can measure thinking and valuing habits. That's one of the blessings that Dr. Hartman left us with before he passed away in 72. And he allows us to rank 18 items, 2 sets of 18 items, to see how we see the world. How are we perceiving the world today? And are we perceiving it from broad perspectives that allow us to take in all the information and make good decisions? Or do we also have a narrow perspectives that limit our vision, which then limits our options and our choices? So we might not be making the best choices and adding the greatest value from those perspectives. And that's what the Hartman Value Profile does. It allows you to see where you think the best. I mean, growing up, I had low self-esteem, and so people would always say, change your attitude. And great, I would love to not have low self-esteem. How do you do that? But nobody could ever tell me how. They told me to read books and stuff, and those were good. But I never really knew how to change. And one of the things about neuroaxiology, which is the combination of neuroscience and axiology, is that we actually teach you how to shift your thinking to what we call value judgment quotients, or VQs for short. We teach you how to shift to the VQs that are your strengths and ignore the ones that keep you in a narrower mindset or perspective.
Mm-hmm. And you have on your website, you have it's like a free trial or evaluation that you let people take, and I think you get to 3 of those 18 questions, correct?
Yeah, you have 2 sets of 18 items, which actually produces 36 measurements, 36 different perspectives that your mind can take. 18 of them are for your worldview, because Hartman discovered that you see your world from your skin out differently than you see yourself.
Right.
So 18 are for the worldview, and 18 are for the how you see yourself, your self-view. And so we actually get 36 measurements when you take that test. However, that's incredibly overwhelming to see all of those results and know what to do with them. So in the free report that you'll get back, you get to see 1 of your strengths and 2 of your, or what we call VQ 100s, 100%, and then 2 of your low VQs, which are your more challenging. And then it's not just a report that you look at and say, oh, that's nice to know. That's really good stuff. Oh, yeah. Or I don't believe any of that. It can be the case too. But it's a report that you can actually use. We actually teach you how, in just that short report, we teach you how you can use your VQs and the VQ profile to shift from your low VQs to your best thinking, which is your VQ 100. And so we give you things called centering questions that you can ask yourself to pull yourself into a better mindset and better perspective.
Mm-hmm. And again, I'll have a link to that on the show notes for this episode. And I took that test and I got the 3 the report with the 3 items, and it was spot on. and it was disconcerting. I was a little what's the word?
Skeptical.
No, actually, no? I was open-minded, but especially the 2 areas of improvement, I guess, to put it nicely, it was really accurate in a way that made me almost uncomfortable. Because it's right, and I know it's right, So now here's my question though. Like and you talk about this as well. It's about the fact that we need to that it's good for us to focus on our strengths. And this is, for example, we homeschool our kids, and this is something we deal with every day. Laura, she's really into science, and so we just let her go. And learn as much as she wants there, and instead of hammering into her head things that she quote unquote needs to master, but she's not as good at. Right. Now, when you talk about improving the areas that you need improvement, isn't that counterintuitive to the doctrine of working on your strengths?
Well, I found that, very interesting, because when you do get your report, right, and you probably did this too, most people do, they look at the 2 red or orange ones and they're like, oh, yeah, how do I fix those? And they just completely skip over the one on page 5, which is their strength. They're just like, oh, yeah, whatever. I'm like that. And that's really how, again, one of the habits that we have and how we've been trained. We've been trained to fix weaknesses.
Right.
And when you learn how the brain works, whenever you focus on something, you're actually telling the brain that you want more of that you want to make that a habit. Because the more you think a thought, your brain's like, she's thought or he's thought this thought a lot. I'm just going to make this autopilot for them. And so when you continue to work on your weaknesses, like for me, one of my weaknesses in the workforce was presentations. I was so nervous and I didn't like to talk to strangers. So presenting was the last thing I ever wanted to do. Getting up and speaking in front of people, horrendous, just terrible to even think about it, right? And so my valuing habit of speaking that I had was getting in the way. And I can tell you, my bosses during all my performance reviews said, "Oh, Traci, you suck at presenting. You really should take a class on that." And I just don't know how many people, that are listening to this, and yourself included, how many of you love to do the things that you're just terrible at? Not too many of us.
You should
right?
sit in a classroom for 6 hours tomorrow and focus on this thing you hate.
Yes, exactly. Well, and then the thing was, it really wasn't my ability to present that was getting, it wasn't a skill that was getting in the way. It was my thinking. And so I'd sit there in that presentation class, and what do they have you do? Present. And I'd watch all the other people, and they'd be, in my mind, they'd be geniuses at this stuff. They were brilliant presenters. And then there's me. And so it actually made me feel worse about presenting and made my skills in terms of presenting go down by trying to fix a weakness. Now, if people are going to get fired because they can't do something, please go fix a weakness. But other than that, truly, you should learn how to use the things that you're really good at. And I love what you said you're doing with your daughter, because she can also learn spelling. She can learn math. She can learn a whole bunch of stuff through science.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And exactly. So maybe use your strengths that are, let's say, way up here to pull your weaknesses that are way down here, but using those strengths that you have. Right? So
you can improve your weaknesses, not by truly improving your weaknesses, but by using your strengths. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we teach you. We have different measurements on the assessment, nurturing and valuing others, or balancing freedom and conformance, and being at peace. There's a whole 36 of them. There's 36 different measurements that you have. And no matter which one or ones are your VQ 100s, your balanced perspectives, you can use that perspective to accomplish your goals. And people love to do the things that they're good at. And so why don't we do more of that? Why don't we say, "Oh my gosh, Caesar, you're great at this engineering stuff. Let's go take some more classes on that." Rather than saying, "Hey, you're a terrible cook. Go take some cooking class," or whatever it happens to be, right?
Right.
And when project managers start to focus on the strengths of people, you're actually intrinsically valuing them, and intrinsically will then motivate them as well.
Mm-hmm. And here, Traci, this is the central motivation for me to do this show. It's this message, and that's why I was so excited to have you on. In my case, I enjoy podcasting. I'm fairly good at it. I know the technology behind it, and I thought to myself, how can I use this to help me with my career, or help me with my goals? So I'm creating this show, which is kind of unusual.
Right.
Usually people go and take a seminar, or they go on a conference, and but they buy a book and read it. And I've done those things too, but I'm getting to talk to you.
Right.
And I'm learning all these things because I'm focusing on something that is one of my strengths. And I want to encourage everybody who's listening right now to think about that one thing that you're good at, that you enjoy. That one thing that when you start talking about it at the dinner table, your wife just rolls her eyes because she's heard it so many times,
Yes.
And think about a way to use that to help you reach your goals, and to help you work on those weaknesses that you have. And in your case, it was the public speaking, and that's what you do. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And I didn't do it by, I didn't get there by focusing on public speaking, right? My passion is to lower the stress and add more value and make a difference in the lives of other people. And when I saw this science, and we put together this technology, if you want to call it that, of neuroaxiology, I saw the impact that it made in my life when I started focusing on my strengths. Because to be honest, most people would have never guessed, if you saw all the measurements of the VQ profile, you'd have never guessed nurturing and valuing others were my strengths. I didn't use them. And a lot of people who get their VQ profile, they're like, I don't see that as my strengths. Understood, because your low VQs, mine were, I did not nurture myself or value myself. That got in the way. So I spent most of my thinking and time and making value judgments from my low VQs, which takes away value. So if I didn't believe in myself, why would I want to nurture other people? Why would you want to put yourself out there? And so when I saw those results and I learned how to use them, I'm like, all right, if nurturing others is supposed to be my strength, I'm going to go try it. And I'm very honest, within 6 months of going through a little coaching program, I had my first talk at PMI Houston, and there were like 40 people in the room. Then I had the talk the next later, because it's a big chapter, and there were 100 and some people in the room. And that's what started me. And it was, okay, the first ones aren't necessarily easy, but they weren't as stressful as they used to be in the past. Because when you really learn to shift to your strengths, and it's not about change, it's just about shifting to where you're already brilliant, as measured by the assessment there, life is easy because you get to see big, broad pictures. I don't think about myself when I'm speaking. I think about nurturing and valuing others and adding value to their lives and the lives of those of you listening too. Right.
Yeah, exactly. When you're up there, you're not speaking in public, but you're nurturing people.
Absolutely.
It's just how you look at it. Very good.
Yeah. Yep.
Traci, there's so much more we can talk about. Maybe I will have you again if you'd like to come back and talk about the other things that we planned on talking about, like leadership versus management and how to delegate, things like that. For the listener, if you go to pmforthemasses.com/value, you'll be redirected to Traci's page where you can go and take this assessment, and I really recommend you do it. And if you really want to work on those, just follow up with her. And you offer the free assessment, and there's more to the offer too, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't ever want to just deliver a report, because people will tend to just look at it, and sometimes if they don't, they'll just talk themselves out of, oh yeah, that is or that isn't or whatever. And this is truly an assessment report that you haven't seen before. It's not telling you how you are, it's measuring how you think. And so I offer also a free 20-minute consultation along with your free report. So I will send you an email. You can schedule an appointment on my calendar and sit down and talk with me for 20 minutes so we can put those results that you receive in the context of your life. Not just a nice to know, but also how to use them.
And again, I can't recommend that enough. Even just to talk to you for 20 minutes, that's worth it. It's really, really great. The value that you bring, and you're walking the walk, aren't you? You're bringing value to our profession, and it's really appreciated. And again, you can go to pmforthemasses.com/value, or you can check the show notes for this episode, where you can learn more about Traci, what she's doing, and how to get in touch with her and how to benefit from her material. Traci, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure our audience is eager to get home if they're driving or they're working out to go and check out your material. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cesar. I appreciate the time with you. It's been great.
Have a good day.
You too.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Wow, that was really great. Really great. And it's hard to believe that she was afraid of public speaking up until recently. She's such a natural. And I saw her live, and she's really a dynamic speaker. She's one of the best speakers I've ever seen. And the inspiring thing is that she has almost found a formula, to use her strengths to improve her shortcomings. And the results are really obvious, as you can see. So to learn more about how to do that, I really recommend you take that free test that we talked about during the interview. And for that, you can go to pmforthemasses.com/value. Okay, pmforthemasses.com/value. Or you can just visit the show notes for this episode at pmforthemasses.com/2. And all the links that we talked about, including the link to her free assessment, is going to be there on the show notes. All right, I'd like to thank some of the people who, the two iTunes reviewers that I had so far. I mean, I'm recording this. What day is today? Today's Wednesday, July 10th, and the show was just live, on Monday. So it's really been less than 3 days that the show has been on in iTunes, and I already have 2 reviewers. So thank you. And the reviewers today are Cliff Ravenscraft and Brian Wallace, and the reviews are great. And I like to thank them personally. And Cliff is, I happen to know these 2 guys, so I don't know if that counts as a review, but I think it does because they actually listen to the show, and I know for a fact that they're going to be subscribing and listening. So Cliff is the top podcasting consultant and also a personal friend of mine, and it really means a lot to me, Cliff, that you're listening and that you left me a review there. Thank you. And you can find Cliff and his wonderful material at learnhowtopodcast.com. If you're thinking about having a podcast, and I've already had, even after my first episode here, I already have people coming to me and asking me for advice on how to start podcasting. And I have one answer for them. I just point everybody to Cliff's material. And again, you can find his website at learnhowtopodcast.com. And I would also like to personally thank Brian Wallace, who also left a review. He's from physicianassistantexamreview.com. And apparently he's also interested in project management, and he left me a review there. And Brian does great work helping physician assistants pass their certification exam. And he's also a friend of mine, fellow podcaster. And his website is physicianassistantexamreview.com. Kind of a long URL, but again, I'll have that on the show notes for this episode. So now I would really appreciate it if you would do the same. Leave me a review there. Do you like the show so far? What do you think? Leave me a review there in iTunes. It would really help the show reach more people. And especially now that it's right at the beginning, if there are more reviews, it increases the chance of people finding the show and benefiting from it. And it's the best thing you can do to help me right now is to leave me a review there in iTunes. And also, don't forget, if you listened to the episode last week with Peter Taylor, he is giving away a copy of the Lazy Winner book that he wrote. And it's a great book. And I'm going to be giving that away to one person who leaves me a review in iTunes. And I'm going to be revealing that in 2 or 3 weeks. So right now, there's only 2 people. It's a toss-up between Cliff and Brian. So the chances of you winning the book are great. I'm just saying. So that's it for episode 2 of the PM for the Masses podcast. For the next couple weeks, I will be actually out of the country. But I wanted to let you know that even though I'm not going to be here behind the microphone, the show will go on as if I were still here. On this weekend, I'm going to produce the next 2 episodes, which will be released while I'm away. So fear not, you're going to get the shows early Thursday mornings the next following weeks. And if you're curious where I'm going to be, I'm going to be going to my native land of Brazil, and I'll be leading a group of teenage pilgrims to meet the Pope. Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? Well, kind of. We're going to meet the Pope, kind of. It's an event called World Youth Day, and it happens every other year, kind of every 2 or 3 years. And there will be literally millions of youth from around the world gathering in Rio to meet Pope Francis on his first trip outside the Vatican since taking the helm there. So anyway, I'm going to be down there, but thanks to the magic of the internet, I'll still be able to release new episodes for the show, even though I might be sleeping outside. I honestly don't know where I'm going to be sleeping for half the time that I'm there, but I might not even have internet access for many of these days, but the show will go on. So that's it. I hope you are enjoying the show, and until the next episode, and remember, my friends, that life is a project and you are the manager. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com